Ladies and gentlemen, Publicly Buzzed Live coming at you right now. Thank you for coming through. And the people coming over from Jay, thank you very much. We're getting started right now.
Let's rock.
Yo, ladies and gentlemen, welcome in here. What is going on? Publicly Buzzed Live on the air. Thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate it. Tuesday night, we've made it to another night and through another day into the mid of another week. I appreciate everyone for coming through and spending a little bit of time with me. I appreciate it. We're going to be going over the craziness from today in the Karen Reed trial. Day 15. What the hell? And if you're coming in from Jay, dude, thank you so much. Appreciate you for shooting everybody over from his premiere, which was hilarious, per usual. I said it in the chat. Dude, king of pop culture references in the true crime community. Maybe the world, Jay. But yeah, today was absolute madness. Okay, I was sending out a lot of different tweets, going crazy. I was watching this at work, trying to watch this, which is difficult, which is why I like to come on here in the evenings and watch this. Grab a brewski, hang out, we can chat, we can watch this, and yeah, we can share our opinions, and that's what I generally like to do. But today this was fiery as crap, but I left this with tons of questions. All right, I know we're going to start right back up tomorrow, and tomorrow's a full day, but good lord. So the butt dials. I just sent out this tweet. So yeah, we with the butt dials, you also have the perfect hangups after. So there was no voicemail at the end at all left on John's phone. When you butt dial someone, you don't magically hang up, and especially not 7 times before something comes through on those voicemails. Who has ever done an absolute, if it was a butt dial, a phantom call, one of these calls that you didn't mean to do, if that does happen, the voicemail will pick up and you get that weird message at the end. You're not going to get 7 of them. That's absolute madness. But if it does happen, and that has happened, you'll get that you'll hear the background of wherever that person is. And this didn't happen. That they cut that out, okay? Or wanted that not to. That's insane, okay? That means that the butt hung up is what that means before the voicemail came through. That's insane. That is absolute madness. So I don't know. I'm starting after the first break. So we're going to be going in here, and again, we're watching at 1.5 speed. So it is going to be fast paced, but again, thank you all for coming in, hanging out. Hit that like, help us out here at Publicly Buzzed. If you aren't subbed up, sub up. We're pushing this thing to 10K. We're getting there slowly but surely, but be a part of that train. Become a part of Buzz Nation. And yeah, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Let's rock and roll tonight. I want to start early because this is going to be a little bit of we'll see how fast we get through this. We'll see what happens. See what happens here. I think I got this set up perfectly.
Okay, whenever you're ready, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor. McCabe, I want to go back very briefly to something you said just before we broke, and that was in respect of the statements that you attribute to my client out at the scene. You said, well, there was an officer possibly asking questions, or it could have been a female EMT, and I wasn't answering questions about that, correct? Hence, you didn't say, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Can you be clear on your question?
Let me rephrase that. Before we broke a few minutes ago, you had said, the reason I didn't say, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, is because I was never asked.
Yo, yeah, thanks for hanging out, everybody. Welcome in here.
Asked her when she declared that. I just didn't offer it. And then you said, or it could have been an EMT.
Yes, I'm unclear who was there.
Isn't it true that at the grand jury, the question that was posed to you, and this is counsel page 208, grand jury, The question that was posed to you is, quote, so what happens next with yourself, Ms. Roberts, and Ms. Reed? And your answer was, so there are different, police officers getting statements from us. At one point, I'm standing with Ms. Reed, and she's saying, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? And there was, I believe, an EMT, a female, standing right next to me into her yelling, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead? It was pretty much nonstop. Remember that testimony?
I do.
So in point of fact, you were answering the direct question about what happened in front of the police officer and the EMT, correct?
There were multiple police officers and multiple EMTs present.
So now this is another police officer and a different EMT.
I'm not saying that.
Okay. But nowhere in this did you say she declared the words, I hit him. Correct? We agree on that.
Correct.
Your Honor, I have I would like to have Mark as next in order.
Okay.
May I approach?
Yes.
Yo, Shwetty, what's up, dude? I'm over here in the background trying to get the chat where I can pop it up on screen, and it is being difficult tonight. But yeah, welcome in, everybody. Thank you very much.
That will be exhibit 96.
Thank you.
What's going on here?
With court permission, I would like to play a portion of this and then stop it.
Okay.
And ask a couple questions about it. Okay? It's audio only. Mr. McCabe, I've paused the audio tape just to ask you a couple of foundational questions. Do you recognize what's on that audio tape?
Yes, that is my voice.
Okay. You recognize you starting a 911 call, correct?
Correct.
Similar to the call we just listened to a few minutes ago, which was the actual 911 call, correct?
What's the difference between the two of them?
I'm about to explain it. It's a confusing question, and I apologize. This appears to be an open voicemail overhearing your 911 call. Do you recognize that?
Now that you explain it, okay.
You hear a rhythmic boom, 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 boom.
The windshield wipers.
Okay, so that was my next question. That would have been an open voicemail that was recorded inside the cab of the SUV that you were seated in, correct?
Correct.
Overhearing you call 911 and overhearing whatever else was going on, ambient noise at the scene, correct?
Correct.
Does that sound like a true and correct copy of at least a portion of the 911 call that you heard?
I have to listen to it again, but
Well, why don't we continue listening to it and see if you recognize it?
okay.
With your permission? Yes.
Not being able to answer anything was so frustrating.
Pause it. Do you hear a person in the background screaming?
Yes,
Who's that?
Miss Reed.
I'm going to put this.
One thing at the very beginning, I thought that was maybe even a little too crazy. Like, I guess if they're going all in, but I think it was at the very beginning of today. They're basically like trying to paint the picture that it was premeditated in the way that they were trying to separate Karen and John at the bar, and she was trying to get them separated then. So I thought that was pretty far-fetched, honestly. There's so much of this that seems absolutely insane, but then you see testimony like this today, like, I don't know, man. Like, this shit is fucking crazy. Like even the part that I started this show off with the butt dials, like those or they're basically saying that is them calling his phone that entire from like midnight to almost 1 in the morning after midnight, but like 12:15 to 12:50, something like that. I don't know the exact times, but it's around there. 7 times looking for the phone because they think that, they've lost the phone, and that's why they're hanging up every single time also, before they get to the voicemail. But when we get an actual, like a Cellubrite expert up here, someone that can tell us, first of all, if she turned over a phone that did have calls deleted, that should be able to be cleared on either side of the expert aisle, whether that's from the defense or from the Commonwealth. Like, if there's 2 different experts in that field that are disagreeing on something that simple, I want to know that information. But I just don't know, man. This is the wildest shit ever to watch. Insane.
Did you hear the audio recording we just marked into evidence?
I did. It was very muffled, and some parts were very hard to understand.
Understood. The person on the phone, who was that person?
I called 911.
And the person that was, for the most part, the person's voice that you could hear screaming, sounding sort of hysterical, who was that?
Karen.
Could you also hear Carrie Roberts' voice at various times in the background?
Yes.
And she was, for lack of a better word, trying to calm Karen down?
Yes.
And at some point, telling her to just shut up, you're not helping.
Yes, exactly.
Because she was so hysterical and so upset.
Erratic.
I want to play the rest of this. It appears that this recording is longer than your 911 call. Do you agree with that?
Well, I'd have to see.
Well, the 911 call's already ended, correct?
I'm not sure how long was the 911 call.
Okay, this is about 3.5 minutes into a 4-minute recording. My only question is, would you agree that the 911 call is subsumed within this full 4-minute recording?
I couldn't make that from that muffled.
You couldn't tell?
I couldn't tell. So if you have my phone record, you could, I'm assuming, tell when the 911 call ended, because I know the 911 call was long because there were multiple, they had transferred me multiple times.
She's willing to trust that. I know you have the record of that. We also have the record of these missed calls, of these calls that you say don't exist, that you did not do, that the only explanation is the say but dials.
Times.
Right.
Not 17, like that's crazy. Like,
I'd like you to listen very, very closely, and I know that it is a muffled recording by definition.
I can't get over that.
From this point forward, I want you to pay very close attention. I want to ask you if you hear a voice, very muffled, toward the end of this recording.
Two people talking.
Stop. Did you hear a muffled voice in the foreground after you heard Ms. Reed scream or yell?
I heard 2 people talking.
Okay. And one of those was a very muffled voice on this recording, correct?
Most of the recording was muffled.
The one I'm talking about is I just played the voice that was muffled in the foreground of the audio recording, for want of a better phrase.
Yes, I heard that. Yes.
Was that you?
I don't know if that was me.
There was nobody else in the cab of the car with you, was there?
I was standing at the trunk of the car, outside of the car.
Carrie Roberts was over by Mr. O'Keefe,
Agree. Yes, they were kind of running back and forth at times.
and Karen was over by Mr. O'Keefe for most of that.
Yes,
But you were the one by the car.
back and forth. Mm-hmm.
You called Nicole, your sister. By the way, I have to say that can we finish playing this just for, okay, thank you. Okay, that appears to be the end of the tape.
Okay.
Okay. You called your sister at 6:07 and 42 seconds, correct?
I don't have my phone record in front of me.
Does that sound about right?
Approximately.
And you made a second phone call at 6:08 and 17 seconds. Does that sound about right?
I did call her twice. Yes.
And both of those calls show in your extraction that they were answered phone calls, right?
I don't have my extraction in front of me.
Well, you've been asked this question a bunch of times, right? You were asked this question at the other proceeding, is that right?
Yes.
You
And
were shown phone records.
if you have them, I could see them here.
You were shown phone records then.
Yes.
Okay. And at that time, you were confronted with the fact that the phone records show a 7-second call for 6:07. Correct?
Objection.
I'm going to strike the word confronted. Go ahead and ask.
I'll pick another
Go
word.
ahead and ask the
You
question.
were shown evidence that the 607 call lasted 7 seconds.
My sister never answered the phone.
Okay. I know you want to answer your own questions.
Yeah.
I'd like if you to answer my question. Were you shown records that showed the call lasted 7 seconds?
I
And
cannot
she's, like,
recall
trying
the
to
exact
explain-
record I was shown, but I was shown a phone record.
Okay. And you were shown that the same phone record showed that the 608 call lasted 8
Like
seconds. Right?
what she's trying to explain in those moments when she won't actually answer these questions, I feel like is even making it more confusing for the jury, which maybe what I feel like they can't want that though. I mean, and she's trying to make sure that this narrative gets across as well.
Again, I don't have it in front of me.
Like, to play devil's advocate right now, like if you are an innocent person or innocent folks and you're in this position, you have been what you feel like harassed, whatever you want to say there. I could see somebody being extremely standoffish from this questioning, but what hurts her, even everything I just said, is the fact that there are what I'm presuming is going to be provable lies. Like some of this stuff and what we already know is essentially lies because she can't answer them, or she answers some of this stuff just slightly differently. Some stuff she's pretty confident on with her answers, the yes and the no's, and then sometimes she's just slightly off with it, almost like dancing around it. Man, it's just, it screams like an evasive lying person. Everything about this demeanor is fucking weird and strange if you are truly just a bystander in all of this.
Sound about right?
About
Too
right, and
much.
there were a number of other calls
I
that
don't know,
showed
man.
answered that weren't answered.
Well, we'll get to
That's
this.
my ultimate answer, though.
So the
I
two
do
calls,
not know.
607 and 608, at least the records indicate about 15 seconds worth of open line time, talk time. 7 seconds, 8 seconds, right?
You have the record in front of you. I don't.
I'm just asking if you were in front of, if you were, there's that word again, if you were shown records that established it based on your own phone extraction, your phone records, that the 607 call, 7 second call, 608 call was an 8 second call, right?
I was shown records, but I don't know exactly what they were, how long the call said, because she never answered the phone regardless.
You also made another phone call at 6:23, did you not? To Brian Albert?
If you could share my phone record, it would be very helpful.
Do you recall it?
I know I called my sister and I called my brother-in-law in the house. I do not know the exact times.
Let's tell this. You made a phone call to Brian Albert as well, right?
I believe so.
That was around 6:23. It was a few minutes after you had called Nicole twice, right?
Correct.
And that call was not answered.
None of them were answered.
But the record showed that that call was not answered, as opposed to Nicole's 2 calls, right?
Right.
But the calls to Nicole were deleted from your phone before you turned that phone into law enforcement, weren't they?
Not by me.
By somebody else?
I never deleted any calls when I willingly handed my phone over.
You claim that you didn't delete calls, but you do know that your phone was forensically analyzed, and those calls were in the deleted file folder, correct?
I have seen that, but there were 20 calls, all in a group that were all deleted. So cherry picking a few makes it look a different way,
Okay, so we'll get to those. I'm not cherry picking anything, okay? Asking you questions about the records.
which I would love a copy of if I could see.
We'll get to that in a second. Just going by your memory. You've seen these records a bunch of times. You've been questioned about these records a bunch of times, right?
Yes.
So we know that you called at 6:07, 6:08, or thereabouts, and about 6:23. 2 to Nicole, 1 to Brian, correct?
Correct.
And you'll agree with me that notwithstanding those phone calls, by the way, did you leave voicemails?
No.
When did you hang up? Before it went to voicemail, or was it into voicemail before you hung up?
So it was a bit of a hysterical scene that morning, and I was in a state of shock, and I was just calling my sister and my brother-in-law. They did not answer the phone. I cannot tell you when I hung up because it was a hysterical scene. I was in a state of shock. Everyone was running around, and what seems to be forgotten is that my friend was lying there on the ground.
Oh, I don't think anybody's forgotten.
No one's forgotten that.
You, in fact, did not leave voicemails for any of those 3 calls, did you?
Again, I don't have my phone record in front of me.
That's because Nicole didn't get any voicemails. The calls were answered, right?
The calls were not answered.
You do agree with me that Brian and Nicole Albert, Brian Albert being a police officer, never came out of the house, right?
Correct. Neither did any neighbor.
I know you'd like to continue editorializing after the fact. It's probably time and place for it. This is
Oh
it.
yeah, I forgot to start this off with a.
Hold up!
First of all,
Hold up!
one of those, but
Hold
also, ladies and gentlemen, in this corner.
If you can answer my question, I'd ask that you do that. Did Brian Albert come out of the house?
No.
Did Nicole Albert come out of the house?
No.
Thank you.
From Hollywood, California.
How many of the initial police officers from Canton Police Department who responded to the scene were you friends with?
I would say I am friendly with Mike Lank. He was 5 years older than me. I knew him growing up. If I saw him around town, I would say, hey, how are you? Pretty much that's the extent.
Anybody else other than Mike Lank that you're friends with?
Not that I am friends with. I knew of Officer Sean Good, but I wouldn't say I was friends with him. I just knew who he was.
And you also knew that Officer Lank was very good friends with the Albert family.
Good friends, yes.
You knew that Mike Lank and Chris Albert had a long-standing friendship, correct?
Correct.
You just indicated you also knew Officer Good, is that right?
Didn't know him. I said I knew of him.
Okay. With regard to names like Sarah, Delaney, not so much.
Seraph has a sister that's the same age as my sister, but I had never, to my knowledge, met Seraph.
And of all the officers who responded to the scene, the two who actually went inside the Albert home to talk to Brian Albert and others was, in fact, Mike Lank and Officer Good.
I don't remember Officer Good in the house. I only remember Officer Lank.
The reason you know that, the reason you have a memory of what was happening inside the house is because you were allowed to actually go into that home, correct?
Correct.
And you went into that home before any of the officers went into the home. Is that right?
Correct.
You were allowed to have private conversations with Brian Albert?
I woke Brian Albert up.
Were you allowed to have private conversations with Brian Albert?
Yes.
And you were allowed to have private conversations with your sister, Nicole?
Yes.
And that was before the police ever went in to do any formal interviews of you, Brian, or Nicole, correct?
Correct.
Did you discuss in these private conversations how you three were going to answer any questions for the police when you were asked?
No.
Did you talk about what you were going to say in any respect?
We were in shock. There was no.
Did you talk about what Brian and Nicole were going to say in their interviews with the police?
No.
Did Brian Albert give you any advice as a police detective what you should do or say when you were interviewed?
No.
And all the time, every time they bring up the text messages of the correspondences with the exactly and the just, I don't remember everything verbatim, but it all sounds fucking weird as hell. Like nothing about that sounds normal.
Any advice as a police detective what you should do with your cell phone?
No.
Did he tell you that the police might want to get a hold of your cell phone at some point?
No.
Did you two discuss the calls that you made to Nicole Albert at 6:07 and 6:08 and the call that you made to Brian Albert at 6:23?
No.
Did you ever discuss the idea of potentially deleting any of those calls that were made that early morning?
Absolutely not.
Would you tell us if you did?
Yes, because I'm an honest and truthful person.
Did you tell them which officers were outside?
I saw people talking about that part.
I don't recall.
I totally missed that one. Yeah, you don't have to say that if you are. That's crazy.
And the Alberts was outside.
I don't recall.
Damn, I have to go upstairs. I get lighter.
And then your husband Matt McCabe arrived at the scene, correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
He was allowed to come in the house as well, right?
I believe Officer Lank was in the house before Matt came into the house.
And a little bit later that morning, Julie Albert came over, correct?
Correct.
And by the way, Officer Lank, after just a few minutes, then left the house, correct?
Correct.
Leaving all the witnesses inside together.
Correct.
And I can't remember if I asked this question. Just tell me that one. Did Julie Albert come over?
Damn, I can't highlight
When Chris came
anything. I want to highlight Jay's
Yes.
comment. I'm a person who likes steak, screams it.
Even Brian Higgins came over.
Correct.
These are all friends and family of yours, correct?
Not Brian Higgins. I had only met a handful of times.
But you consider
Imagine
them friends.
Dan on the stand trying to deny his love with milk. Imagine it! Imagine it!
A friend of Brian Albert's is how I would reference him.
Fair enough. So these are friends and family of Brian Albert.
Correct.
And everyone was permitted to discuss the circumstances of the evening before, going into the early morning hours, with each other, with no police there, correct?
I sat with my family in shock and horror.
Were you allowed to discuss the circumstances of the night before, going into the early morning hours, amongst yourselves, without any police presence? Yes or no?
There was no reason for us to be allowed or not allowed. We did nothing wrong.
Understand my question? Did you get it?
Yes, I understand your question.
Can you answer it yes or no? Were you allowed, that group of folks, were you allowed to discuss the case without police presence?
Yes.
Okay.
Horror.
So you listened during that friends and family gathering, you listened to what Brian Albert had to say, correct?
He didn't really say much.
He was able to listen to what you had to say?
Again, you're creating a scene that didn't happen.
Anything, Mr. McCabe, I'm asking some questions. But you don't seem to want to answer.
Objection, Your Honor.
All right, so let's ask a question and let's get an answer, okay?
Yes or no? Was Brian Albert there within earshot when you discussed your version of what had happened?
I didn't discuss much. I sat there in shock and horror, so I spoke very little, to be honest with you.
But when you did speak, he could hear.
Yes.
And Nicole could hear.
Yes.
And Chris Albert could hear.
Chris came much later.
And your husband, Matt McCabe, he could hear.
Yes.
Okay. And then when Chris is talking about what happened at Waterfall, you could hear and Brian could hear. In other words, everybody could hear everybody.
When Chris came, I was
Why
almost about to leave.
does like she sounded like she's stalking normal on 1.5.
I'm guessing that the topic of what had happened was still on everybody's
And he
mind.
sounds like he's
Everybody was trying to figure out what had happened
And you're discussing it amongst yourselves. That's my point.
with my sister and my brother-in-law and my husband. Correct.
Before you left,
shrink her
you said
head
you were
just
about
a
to leave.
little
Before
bit.
you left,
And I got it in murder
another
charge
album
mode.
came over to the house, correct?
I don't recall seeing him.
Him.
Kevin Albert.
How'd you know I was talking about Kevin Albert?
Because you said another Albert came over, and I was
6 brothers.
told later it was Kevin.
I see. So you believe that Kevin was not there when you were still there?
I was in a state of shock. He may have walked in.
That's what you remember.
I don't remember it. No,
He could have.
he could have been, absolutely.
And you knew he was a Canton police officer.
Yes.
You had already gotten a call from Michael Proctor, hadn't you?
Yes.
He told you he wanted to speak with you.
Correct.
So you knew at that point that the Massachusetts State Police troopers had taken over the investigation of the case, correct?
Correct.
Did Michael Proctor tell you that the Canton Police Department had been recused from the case?
Objection.
Sustained.
Let me ask it a different way. Did you have knowledge in any way, shape, form, or fashion, at that point, that Canton Police Department was not supposed to be involved in the case?
Objection.
Sustained.
Speaking of Trooper Proctor, when you first interviewed with him, that was January 29th, 2022. We've already discussed that a little bit today, correct?
Correct.
And he was taking notes while you were interviewing with him, is that right?
I believe so.
You mentioned on Friday your observations of the taillight that day. Is that right?
Correct.
You told Mr. Lally that you indicated that the taillight.
But every time
looked when you
Lally
saw it, just like the photograph.
objected today, it sounded like he was dying. Like his actual being was coming out of his body. Objection. Objection.
He showed you.
And
Correct?
that's
I told him it was
I'm
hard to
not
make out,
exaggerating. on
and with the
those.
snow on it, but it looked in the picture that he showed.
I showed you the second photo, the close up, basically of the SUV Sally. Is that right?
Yes.
And you said, yeah, that's the condition of the taillight, correct?
Yes.
You also told Trooper Proctor about your observations of the taillight on that same day, the 29th, right?
Correct.
That's literally the same day that you saw the taillight, correct?
Correct.
Just a few hours later, is that right?
Correct.
And what you told Trooper Proctor that day was that you, quote, saw a crack in it, end quote, correct?
I told him that the taillight was cracked.
Matter of fact, the words that you used were that you saw, and I'm not fighting you on those words. You saw that it was cracked. You actually said, I saw a crack in it, correct?
That's what he said. I said, I'm telling you, I said the taillight was cracked.
This is another example of him screwing up your words, correct?
You'd have to ask Trooper Proctor.
So I'm asking you, did you say, I saw a crack in it?
I said the taillight was cracked.
So you
That was
didn't
pretty
say,
bad,
I saw a
like-
crack in it, right?
I said the taillight was cracked.
The photograph that you were shown,
Feels
the
weird
court's
not
permission,
bringing up your all's comments, honestly.
it's Exhibit
Not
92,
a
on
fan.
Youthful Friday.
Okay.
I don't know why it's broken.
May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
You see that photograph? You're showing this photograph on Friday. Does that look like? Does it look like a crack in it?
It's cracked. Yes.
It's actually completely missing.
Yeah. And I believe in one of the reports, one of the many reports, it will say that I said it was cracked and missing pieces.
Right.
You
Does
know,
that
I've
look
given a lot of different reports with a lot of different testimonies.
like cracked and missing pieces, or does that look like the entirety of the taillight is basically gone?
Again, in that picture, there are the red pieces. There are some of it still there. So it's cracked and missing. In a state of shock, that was my description.
So in a state of shock, you said there was a crack in it.
No,
Hours after.
I said it was cracked. I never said there was a crack in it.
So if Trooper Proctor wrote that down, that would be an example of him getting your words wrong yet again.
Objection.
Correct?
That's been answered. Let's move on, please.
That's okay for that. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.
I want to get back to January 29th, that interview with Trooper Proctor. After this interview with Michael Lank, you eventually made your way back to your house. Is that right?
Yes.
You went with your husband, Matt,
Yes.
and you knew that Trooper Proctor was going to show up and interview you and Matt, Mr. McCabe, correct?
On the phone, he wanted to speak with me.
Is that yes?
So I wasn't aware. He asked to speak with
Yeah.
me. I wasn't aware if he was going to speak with Matt.
Saying that's correct is crazy.
You were at least aware that you were going to be interviewed.
Correct.
You told Brian Albert that Trooper Proctor was planning
Like
on
that
interviewing you as
part,
well.
actually, when she's looking at it on the stand, and it's clearly like a completely broken tail light, and she's still just like misrepresenting it to match the words that she, you know, said before. Like, yeah, that's hard to get by. It really is, and it's endless, and it just keeps happening.
Before Trooper Proctor showed up to conduct that interview at your house, Brian Albert actually showed up at your house, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, she digs in. That's a
So
good
Brian
way to
Albert made
put it.
sure that he was in your home before Trooper Proctor made it
Like-
to your house, correct?
Objection.
Think about in real life when that happens, right? When you're in an argument with someone and they just dig their heels in and they will not budge. And I'm guilty of that in much, of course, way less crazy circumstances. I'm talking normal arguments with human beings that don't implement murder. But just think about that for a second, how when you really do run into that type of person, and they will not. That's something I actually really have as I've gotten older. When I was younger, it was probably even worse. I can only imagine. But as I've gotten older, one of the things I try to admit fault, try to always do it. This is a point to where like she's so deep, right? If you're in this type of collusion with this many people and a deep conspiracy like this, you can't just back out. You know, it is completely different circumstances. But again, back to my point, just think about any time you've ever really talked to somebody like that in real life, and you get to that point where you know they're full of shit and they just keep digging in. God, it's so frustrating.
Listening.
Brian Albert was in your home before Trooper Proctor was in your home. Is that right?
I am not sure who arrived first.
But he was there when you were interviewed, wasn't he?
He was upstairs, yes.
And you believe, of course, with that statement, he didn't hear anything about what was going to happen, right? He didn't hear anything about the interview.
No, I don't think he could hear it from where he was.
But you knew he was just a few feet away.
I knew he was up in my bedroom.
We talked a little bit about your call records, and I want to pivot for a second and ask you about those call records. This is Exhibit 90. Yes.
Just takes a swing at him.
Thank you.
Do you recognize that document?
I do, yes.
You were shown this document last week, is that right?
Correct.
This is a forensic extraction report of John O'Keefe's cell phone that you were shown on Friday, right?
Correct.
You acknowledge that it's an accurate report of calls found on John's phone between you and him. Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and this shows the calls that you made to John's phone or you received from John's phone on or between or at or between 12:14 a.m. and 12:50 a.m. I want to direct your attention to those time frames, correct?
Correct.
All right, I want to start at the bottom. It may go in reverse chronological order.
Okay.
I think it does. At 12:14, it shows that you called John O'Keefe and that call was answered. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
At 12:18 a.m., it shows that John O'Keefe called your phone and that was answered as well.
Correct.
And then at 12:29 a.m., you also called John O'Keefe's phone and y'all had a short conversation as well. Is that right?
No.
That the record shows. It shows. Pardon me. Unknown, correct? In terms of whether it was missed or answered.
Excuse me, can you repeat that?
Sure. 12:29. I want to concentrate on the 12:29 a.m. call.
Okay.
That one in the Celebrite extraction, it shows in terms of whether the call was answered or not. The status is unknown, correct? It's on the last page.
Yeah.
Second row from the top.
At 12:29. Unknown, yes.
Unknown. However, you've already acknowledged that y'all did have a short conversation on that 2:29.
No.
29 call, correct?
We didn't speak at 2:29. We spoke at 12:14 and we spoke at 12:18. We never spoke at 12:29.
So you're indicating that the 12:29 call was either missed or otherwise, went to voicemail, something.
The 12:29, yes.
Okay. I want to show you a document. Well, let me ask it this way. According to this, there were 6 more calls between your phone and John O'Keefe's phone.
Correct.
Correct? 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. And that's before, or that's up to 12:50 a.m. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. I'd like to show you another document. Or if I could approach briefly.
Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary.
We did that one, sorry.
May I?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll take, so we don't get mixed up, I'll take these at the back.
Okay, thank you.
I want to show you one more document that you weren't shown on Friday. Do you recognize this one?
No.
Okay. If you look where it indicates on the left column, I'm just putting my thumb here, the
Okay.
left column, the MSISDN user, there's a number that ends there. 0142. Sorry, 0142.
Yes.
So I'm going to answer this question before we approach.
I have no idea what we're approaching about this document.
Yes.
Why don't we just go up there?
Sure.
Can I have that, please? I know we need to look at it.
Your Honor, just for ease of maintenance, may I approach and handle
Yes.
an unredacted version?
Yes.
Same thing. Sure.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And if you're just popping
if you look on
through
the
with
left
the
column,
like ski,
Ms. McCabe,
Yes.
you'll see something that says Apple ID.
Yes.
Look to the right of it. Do you recognize that unredacted portion? I don't want you to read it out or anything. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Whose Apple ID is that?
That's mine.
Okay, if you look 6 lines below that, there's a full phone number. Again, don't leave the phone number out. Just tell me if you recognize it.
I do.
Whose is that?
That's mine.
Okay. May I approach you on it?
Yes.
I'll take the unredacted copy back.
Okay.
So we don't get mixed up. Does this appear to be Cellbrite extraction of your phone record, your Apple ID?
Yes.
Okay. And you recognize, without telling me what it is, you recognize that phone number as your phone number back at the time and the Apple ID back at the time,
Yes.
associated with the phone that you then turned in to law enforcement, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You've just looked at the extraction report for John O'Keefe's phone, and you saw those calls between your phone and John O'Keefe's phone after going from 12:14, after that all the way up to 12:50, correct?
Correct.
Take a look at the last couple of pages, page 3 and 4 of your own cell phone extraction report. And tell me if you see a single call listed between you and John O'Keefe for January 29th between 12:14 and 12:50.
There are calls to a number that I'm assuming is John.
What
I'm
time?
just not sure. I see a call at... Wait a minute.
None of this makes any sense.
This report has times everywhere.
Right. It's chronological except for the calls that were deleted. You see a call at 5:52 to John O'Keefe's phone,
She's like, I just cracked the code.
I see a call at 5:52, yes.
but there's not a single call before 5:52 a.m. between 12:14 and 12:50 a.m. Is that right? Not one.
It's very hard to... This report time-wise.
You can look at every single time on the report, there's not that many.
I'm just trying to say that it goes from 7:21 to 5:52 to 7:33 to 7:49. There's no order. They're out of order.
I understand that, Mr. Dave, but if you look at every one of the entries, there's not a single entry for 12:14, 12:18, or any of the subsequent 12:29, any of the subsequent phone calls that are all shown on John O'Keefe's phone extraction. Do you agree with that?
Correct.
May I approach?
Yes.
Like,
Thank you.
you're not on trial, lady. You're being shown something, and I mean, answer the fucking question. The weirdest trial ever, dude. What is happening?
Your Honor, I would move for the admission of in as an exhibit.
Okay, is there an objection?
No, Your Honor.
May I inquire, Your Honor?
Yes.
The fact of the matter is, according to those Cellbrite records and that extraction from your own phone, every one of the calls that you made to John O'Keefe's phone between 12:29 and between 12:14 and 12:50 a.m. was deleted and unrecovered, correct?
I didn't understand that report, and I'm not an expert.
When you compare the two, you saw a bunch of calls on John O'Keefe's phone, right? You know, he couldn't have deleted them. He passed away, right?
Correct.
You saw your cell phone extraction, which is the handshake for John O'Keefe's phone, and all your calls are missing, right?
Objection.
Can you answer that question?
I'm confused. That paper, I don't understand it. It was vague. There were numbers. There were calls everywhere. There was a number of missing calls.
There's a bunch of missing calls, right? You didn't see any of the calls that were reflected on John O'Keefe's phone. Is that right? Yes or no? They're not there.
A lot of calls are missing. I'm not really even sure what's there because the numbers are it's all redacted.
So you were not seeing any redacted calls.
The page you just had in front of me was redacted.
It's now an exhibit.
Now your personal information was redacted. None of the calls were redacted now.
The numbers, I don't know people's phone numbers. I just have them as contacts.
Mr. McCabe, you just said a second ago, and we can do this all day long, or we can just make it simple. The fact of the matter is that report did not show any of the calls that John O'Keefe's phone report showed, correct? From 12:14 to 12:50.
I believe there was one on there.
5:52. That's the next morning, ma'am. Right?
Were there other calls in that time period on to Celebrate?
You just said there weren't. You just looked at it.
I've told you that Celebrate report was extremely hard to read.
Right. The fact is, there are no calls on your own phone extraction between you and John O'Keefe between 12:14 and 12:50. Would you disagree with that, at least on that report?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
The fact is that you deleted your call record before you turned your phone in, didn't you, Ms. McCabe? That's what that report shows.
Absolutely not.
You sanitized your phone because you didn't want the police to know who you had been calling or the fact that you had been calling John O'Keefe's phone incessantly, correct?
Incorrect. I willingly turned over my phone.
After you deleted your phone call logs, correct?
Absolutely not.
What date did you turn your phone over?
Possibly February 3rd.
How many days after this incident was that?
4 or 5.
So you had plenty of time to talk to that friends and family group and ultimately decide to delete your phone calls, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you ever have any group chats with family members who are witnesses in this case?
Yes.
May I approach you?
Yes.
Let's do those. While Mr. Lally is looking through that packet, can I just ask to make sure the record is clear, did you delete any of your calls before you turned your phone into law enforcement?
I spoke with the 2 officers that I handed my phone over to, and I asked if I could delete the personal conversations with my daughters, and they said absolutely yes, that I could.
So other than calls with your daughters that you deleted, did you delete any other calls on your phone at all?
It was text messages. It was actually text messages with my daughters that I deleted, and that was all I deleted.
Did you delete any phone calls?
I do not recall deleting any phone calls at all. I would have no reason to delete anything.
Well, that's very different than I didn't delete any phone calls. I do not remember deleting phone calls. Means you might have.
In day-to-day life, people delete things, but I do not recall deleting any phone calls.
In day-to-day life, did you delete any of the calls to John O'Keefe?
No,
Did you delete any of your calls with Nicole Albert?
no,
Did you delete any of your calls with Brian Albert?
no,
With Chris Albert?
no,
With Julie Albert?
no,
Coleman Albert?
no,
With any of the witnesses in this case, did you delete any calls before you turned that phone over?
no, no.
May I present?
Yes.
Ms. McCabe, I'm handing you a packet of documents. Appears to be about 10 pages long. Do you recognize what's in those documents?
Yes,
You indicated already that you were part of a group chat with certain members of your family and friends.
correct.
Did that group chat, I'm most interested in the group chat between yourself, Nicole Albert, Brian Albert, Matt McCabe, on or around that group chat starting on or around February 1st, 2022.
Okay.
Does that look like a true and accurate reflection of the text messages between, or certain of the text messages between and among that group?
Yes, the ones I've seen. Yes.
On February
Can you just
1st
tell me what page you're on? I'm sorry.
Of course, Your Honor.
The Bates stamp number?
2148.
Okay, thank you.
Start.
Thank you.
And they should go relatively chronologically, Your Honor, page by
Okay.
page. On February 1st, 2022, around 2:15 in the afternoon on this group chat, did you receive a message from your husband on the group? This is on page 2148. And it should be the middle bubble, the middle and bottom bubble. Quote, Julie said channel 4 is in BE. You see that?
Yes.
The response from Matt McCabe is eating, I assume, quote, ask Chris to ask some questions. Tell them the guy never went in the house, end quote. You see that?
Yes.
You look at the next page, the top, 149. There's a one-word answer from Brian Albert. What is that answer?
Exactly.
Does it appear to you from this chat that Matt McCabe was directing witnesses, specifically Chris Albert, what to say to the news media?
Objection.
I'll allow that. Is that what you're seeing?
That is not how I would understand this.
He never went in. Tell them he never went in the house was the story that had been concocted between and among this group of people in this chat, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
No. John never went in the house. It wasn't a story. It was the truth. And it is the truth.
Just like she said I hid it.
Correct.
So according to this chat, at least, at the very base level, this is one witness telling another witness to give certain information to the media that could be useful to the group, correct? Tell them the guy never went in the house, right?
Objection.
Sustained.
Matt McCabe was directing Chris Albert. Chris Albert wasn't even at the house, was he?
Chris Albert was not at the house, no.
But this chat is Matt McCabe, your husband, telling Chris Albert, who was never at the house and would have no personal knowledge of what happened at the house, to specifically say, the guy never came in the house. The guy, by the way, being John O'Keefe. Right?
That's what he wrote.
Like, she remarkably sounds so fucking normal, and he sounds like an insane person. Like, what does this sound like in regular speed, real quick? What's going on?
Does that sound to you a little bit like collusion?
Objection.
Sustained.
At some point, you sought out Carrie Roberts' cell phone number shortly after the 29th, or maybe not, maybe on the 29th, right?
Correct.
You didn't have her cell number in your phone?
No.
One of your primary concerns was to make sure that you got in contact with Carrie Roberts before the day's end, right?
I wanted to speak to Carrie as she was on her way to the hospital, and I wanted to check in on John.
One of your primary concerns, Ms. McCabe, was that you wanted to make sure you got a hold of Carrie Roberts.
how fast he got.
before the end of the day.
It had nothing to do with getting in touch with her by the end of the day. It was a friend reaching out, wondering how her friend was doing, who was just taken off the front lawn.
On the 29th.
Sounds way more normal.
Yes.
It sounded
So
faster
before
at
the
the
end of the
beginning.
day, Ms. McCabe, you do this all day long. Before the end of the day, you were trying to get a hold of Carrie Roberts, correct?
Immediately in the morning, I wanted to get in touch with her.
Right. So you sought out her
normal,
phone number.
right?
First you tried my client, Karen Reed, correct?
Correct.
But then you found another source for that information. Is that right?
Correct.
And you said just a second ago you were claiming that you needed that information because you knew that she was on the way to see John O'Keefe's parents,
She was picking them up.
and you wanted to check on them.
Correct.
You've been friends with the O'Keefe family for years, haven't you?
Correct.
So you didn't have a need to get Carrie Roberts' phone number, did you?
I wanted to speak with Carrie, see how she was doing. I was not going to call Peg.
You have her phone number, didn't you?
I do, yes.
So if you wanted to check on somebody, you could have just called her.
I was not going to call Peg O'Keefe on the way to see her son at the hospital.
Check on your friend. That was just too much.
I wanted to ask Carrie. I'm sure she was boggled down and probably did not want to speak with anyone. It was a simple thing. I made sure I got Carrie Roberts' number so I could check in and see how John was doing. Also, we had just been through an extremely traumatic event together. There's nothing evil here.
Roberts' number, Ms. McCabe, is because you wanted to make sure that you control her story as she left your site, correct?
Absolutely not.
Did you take any steps whatsoever, to influence Carrie Roberts' statements?
No.
Because that would be collusion, wouldn't it?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you write a text to the group, including Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, and Matt McCabe, where you informed them that, quote, and this is, Your Honor, on page 2158, where you informed them, quote, Carrie is here going over timeline, end quote.
Correct.
So you reported back to Brian, Nicole, and Matt that Carrie was where?
She came over my house.
And you two sat down and went over a, quote, timeline together.
Peggy spoke to Carrie.
Or no? I didn't ask about Peggy.
Well, that's where the timeline started at.
Did you?
Don't be talking about
Peggy.
Peggy.
At your house and, quote, unquote, go over a timeline.
Carrie showed up asking to sit down with me to do a timeline so we would remember everything that had happened.
And you wanted to be super helpful about that, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
Ask it differently.
Sure. You wanted to be helpful to Carrie Roberts.
The two of us were trying to figure out what had happened to our friend.
And so you made sure that you created and drafted with Carrie Roberts a timeline for her, correct?
I didn't make sure of anything. She was the one that asked me to do it.
And not only did you create a timeline, you then reported back to your group, Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Matt McCabe, that she was creating this timeline with you on February 1st, 2022. Isn't that right?
Yes.
After you created or drafted this timeline with Carrie, she actually sat for an interview with the police, did she not? That's not in the chats. I'm just asking. She sat down for an interview with the police, didn't she?
When?
You tell me. It's my question.
I'm not sure of when you're talking about.
Okay, let's start over.
Yes.
After this timeline was created on February 1st, at some point thereafter, Carrie Roberts conducted a formal interview with the police about this case, correct?
Do you have the report?
Hey, Chris,
of
thanks for
that
coming
date?
through, bro.
We're still
Appreciate it,
hearing
man.
She did the interview in your living room.
Have a good
ma'am.
night.
Right?
There was, on Tuesday, 2 officers came to the house and she sat in the other room and spoke with them.
So, using my question, she did the interview at your house.
Oh, they came to my house to interview me and she happened to be there. So they asked if they could speak with her also.
Okay. Did she or did she not do an interview at your house?
She did, yes.
That wasn't that hard. You were present for that interview, weren't you?
I was eating dinner.
Bro.
You were present for the interview, Ms. McCabe,
I was in the house, yes.
and you listened.
I was eating dinner.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
You made sure you gave Carrie Roberts everything she needed for that interview, correct? Quote, everything she might need for that interview, didn't you?
And where is this that you're quoting from?
Asking you.
Oh, I'm sorry. When you quoted, I thought it was in here. I apologize.
We'll get to it in a second. Did you tell her everything that you wanted her to say?
No, I did not.
Did you in any way attempt to influence her testimony before she gave that interview in your living room?
Absolutely not. Carrie is her own person.
But then you did report her progress to the Albert McCabe group in that group chat, didn't you?
Can you show me where, please?
Sure. Isn't it true that in a group text with Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Matt McCabe, you wrote, and this is on page 2159, quote, and we handed Carrie, sorry, and handed phone to Carrie. Remember that?
I see that, yes.
And the very next text is from you telling the group she's telling him everything in all caps, 2 exclamation points.
Yes.
And then you went on to say at 2:55 p.m., it's basically the same moment, quote, all this stuff, end quote, correct?
Correct.
So when you said a couple of minutes ago that you weren't listening to what she was saying, that was a lie, wasn't it?
We're talking about 2 different interviews. I'm talking about when the officers came to my house and spoke to her there. You're saying that I handed the phone over, so that would be a different interview.
Okay, this is on February 1st at 2:55. I wasn't there. You were there. She was in your house on February 1st giving an interview to the police, wasn't she?
One day she was there giving an interview to the police.
And while she was there,
But I do not believe it was at 2:55. It was later in the evening, so I think you might have 2 events confused.
either way, whether she was on the phone with the police or sitting there in your living room with the police, you were listening to her and reporting back to the group. She's telling them everything.
No, it's not correct. The one that she did with the police, she did in the other room. And the one she did on the phone, I said, she's telling them everything.
I know.
Because Carrie is an extremely blunt person, and she was giving personal feelings about the situation. And I was horrified by it.
To the police.
To the police.
And you're listening.
I heard a statement she said that horrified me.
And then you're reporting it back to the group, weren't you?
That one thing she stated, I reported back to the group, yes.
So you're listening in on a police interview, correct?
It was a phone call.
One side of it, right?
It was a phone call.
You're listening in on a police interview, one side of it, correct?
Correct.
You're eavesdropping on that interview, correct?
I'm sitting with her, and she's taking the call.
And then you're reporting that interview back, or her success in that interview, in your mind, back to the group involving Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, and Matt McCabe. Isn't that what you're doing?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
I absolutely not. That is not how it went. I was horrified because Carrie's a blunt person, not like me. And she had made a comment about Miss Reed and Mr. O'Keefe's relationship. And I was shocked and horrified that she said it the way that she did.
You're so shocked and horrified
I
that
said, oh my God, she's telling them everything. Yes.
you decided it was so important to you to report that back to Brian Albert's friends.
I was horrified.
So you reported that back.
Yes, I said she told them everything.
When you were first confronted with these messages at a separate proceeding in June of 2023, you claimed that you couldn't remember what that exchange was about, correct?
Correct.
And now you just all of a sudden have this newfound memory of exactly what that text message was referring to, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Yes, because Carrie Roberts said a statement and it jogged. I said, oh my God, that's what I meant when I said she said everything.
When did she say this statement?
Probably in the fall. She has made this statement a few times in reference to Karen.
You and Carrie Roberts are still coordinating your statements together.
Oh no, we're not. It's just an opinion she has of Miss Reed.
And all of a sudden that became your, quote, everything. All this stuff.
Intense.
It didn't just become it. I forgot that I had written it, and one day Carrie made the statement, and I'm sure it happens to everyone. You forget something, and then you're like, oh my God, that's what it was.
No, I'm not sure if that happens to everyone.
Objection.
Sustained.
Let me ask you a different question. When you were
Dude,
asked
that
on
look
the
right
phone
there.
a
I
year
took
ago, when it
a
was faint refresher
freeze
in your
frame of
mind,
that
you were
on
asked,
Twitter. Just gonna show it real quick because it was too perfect. I captured it. This one right there. That's right after he said that. Dude, or no, I'm sorry. This one, my bad. That look was right after. That look she gave Alan Jackson right after that was, oh, wow! If looks could kill.
specifically what you were referring to, and your answer was, I have no idea, correct?
Correct.
Because you didn't want to tell them that you had coordinated your statement with Carrie Roberts. Isn't that right?
No, that is not right. I did not remember what it was.
Went on to be asked specifically, do you know who you were referring to? And you said, maybe Carrie, maybe. I'm talking to Carrie. And the question was, but you don't recall this text? And your answer was, I don't remember. That's what you testified to a year ago, correct?
Correct.
But now you're talking about some memory of a disparaging comment that Carrie Roberts has about my client. And that's the everything in your mind.
Yes, the things that she was saying.
Quite obviously, what you were referring to in that text in real time, Ms. McCabe, was that Carrie Roberts was telling the police, quote, everything that you had laid out for her in this timeline meeting you had with her, correct?
Objection.
So it's sustained as to that form. You can ask that question in a proper way.
The everything you referred to in that text in real time was what you had worked out with Carrie in that timeline meeting. That was the everything you were referring to, correct?
Incorrect. We never worked together to come up with a story. We have the facts, and the everything was a comment about your client.
You went on in your group chat with Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, and Matt McCabe to give running updates about whether or not Carrie Roberts was actually following the script, correct?
Incorrect. There was no script.
167. Matt McCabe texted the group, Brian, sitting separate, end quote, correct?
Yes.
Sounds like Matt McCabe is reporting back to Brian Albert, following the instructions, we're sitting separately.
Objection.
Sustained.
1 minute later, Brian Albert had a one-word response to the Brian sitting separate, correct?
Yes.
What was that one-word response?
Okay.
So it sounded like he was giving his approval for where people were situated in that meeting, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
At page 2168, 515.
It's very hard to just look at two texts and try to understand what the context is.
Ms. McCabe, if you don't understand a question that I have, just let me know, but otherwise let me ask the question. On page 2168, at 515, you wrote the group, quote, "You listening?" Correct?
Yes.
And at the same time, 515, you then wrote, "Cops here again," end quote, correct?
Correct.
That was in reference to the police coming over to your house to further interview Carrie Roberts, wasn't it?
That was when they came to talk to me.
And Carrie Roberts was there.
Was
correct?
at my house, correct?
And a few minutes later at 5:23, Nicole Albert texts, "Call us after," correct?
Correct.
And a few minutes after that, Matt McCabe texts, quote, "This girl could write a book, ... nonstop," correct?
Correct.
So obviously Matt McCabe, along with you, was listening to Carrie Roberts in her interview.
We were sitting in the kitchen eating dinner with our children, and Carrie Roberts was in a different room, but she was going on and on and on,
How do you
as
know?
she does, because they were in the other room.
And you could listen.
I could hear voices.
You could hear her interview with the police.
Did not hear her interview. I could hear them talking, but I was sitting at a table with my children eating dinner, getting ready to go to a basketball game.
You then responded to Matt McCabe, "I love it."
Yes.
And then you responded about this interview you just testified under oath and under penalty of perjury, not hearing anything about, just hearing voices. Your next text was, quote, "She is telling them everything,"
Yes.
end quote, correct?
Yes.
So what you said just a few minutes ago about not knowing what she was saying, I could just hear voices, that was a lie.
It was.
Okay.
Objection.
Sustained.
And a couple of seconds later, Nicole Albert responds, one word. What was her response?
Good.
So in order, those texts say, "You listening?" You say, "You listening?"
Objection, Your Honor.
The objection sustained.
At the end of the day, you were eavesdropping on an interview that Carrie Roberts was having with law enforcement in their official capacity, weren't you?
No, I was sitting eating dinner, and some of the things, obviously, I overheard, but I was not eavesdropping. I'm saying there's a possibility if I'm sitting in this room eating dinner and someone's in another room talking, you can hear bits and pieces. Was I eavesdropping? No. Is there some big cover-up story? No.
Well, why, Mr.
jumped
McCabe,
out
does
of
your
that
story, does
seat.
your testimony keep evolving? A second ago, you told this jury, you said, "I couldn't hear a thing. All I could hear was voices, like muffled voices from the other room." She was going on and on about something.
Yeah.
And then when I confronted you with a text message where you said, "She's telling them everything," now it's, "Well, I may have heard a couple of things." Which is it?
No, she was going on and on and on like she does.
And you were listening on and on and on like you do.
I was probably hearing bits and pieces.
Why was it so important to report back to the group that you were happy that Carrie Roberts was saying, quote, "everything"?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
We had both lost our friend. Carrie Roberts was in shock, as was I in shock. The two of us had all this information that just kept coming back to us and back to us. And it's terrifying when you go through an experience and you're in shock. And Kerry was remembering things. I was remembering things. So I was happy for her that she was piecing it all together, and I had pieced it all together, because at the end of the day, our friend was dead, and we were trying to figure out what had happened to him together. There was no direction. We were all trying to figure out what had happened, because that's what you do when you lose somebody you love.
Were you happy for her, or were you happy for you and Brian and Matt and Nicole?
For me and for her, because we were going through this together. There was no conversation.
Got the story out that you're trying to get out through Kerry Roberts. Right?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
There is no story. There's facts and truth on this side. There's no story. The story that you've created is not the truth.
Did I create I hit him, or did you?
That's fact.
A fact that conveniently you didn't mention in your report. To Lank, grand jury.
Jeez, a deep
Right?
sigh by Loud.
Objection.
Is that right?
That is the fact I mentioned. So in some reports, it's there.
The fact is, you wanted to keep very close tabs on Kerry Roberts, didn't you?
No.
On January 29th, if you look on page 2223, did you text the group, quote, Kerry talked to cops and kept it simple, end quote.
Yes.
McCabe, it's becoming a habit for you to keep tabs on Kerry Roberts, isn't it?
Objection.
Sustained.
You'll agree that over and over and over and over again, you're reporting to this tight group, Nicole, Brian Albert, your husband, how Kerry's doing in her stories to the police, aren't you? Over and over and over.
I am telling them what is going on. I wouldn't say it. Well, let's count them. Was there 4 of them? You're saying over and over and over and over. It's a bit extreme.
I see. So you take issue with the way that I phrased over and over and over.
Well, it's misleading, I believe.
I see. Okay. Well, let me see if I can try this in a non-misleading way, Mrs. McCabe.
Okay.
So at least one of us, I'll withdraw. You consistently reported back to the group how Kerry Roberts was doing with the police, didn't you?
I would update them after Kerry saw and spoke to the police. Again, we were all trying to figure out what had happened to John.
There's yet another text from Brian's wife, Nicole, on January 29th, and this is on page 2226. And she says, quote, we'll get more info tomorrow. Don't want to text about it, end quote. And then you texted, right, correct?
Correct.
What's that about?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
We decided that we would talk on the phone. My children look on my phone. Her children look on her phone.
I mean, these sound insane.
We were working with the police. I was sharing information and everything that had happened. We didn't want it to leave our little circle because we were trying to figure out what happened, and we're not going to go running around letting people see, oh my gosh, they think this might have happened or that might have happened. It was nothing more than, let's not text about it.
So you wanted to keep it, in your words, in your little circle, correct?
Correct. I didn't want it all out there, what we had thought had happened. I was going to let the police do their job.
So by definition, the info that Nicole Albert was talking about, that needed to be kept very tight, very secret, correct?
We needed the police to do their job, so we weren't going.
Texts, and Nicole wanted her texts, and the group wanted their texts to be kept secret and private. Isn't that right?
Not secret and private. We just weren't going to communicate certain things over text.
Did you give, or did anybody give you any private information the next day on January 30th?
Didn't even give me private information.
So let me put it in context. That text from Nicole Albert, we'll get more info tomorrow. I don't want to text about it. That was on the 29th, right?
Okay.
So, did you get additional info on the 30th, the next day?
I have no idea.
Did anything significant happen on January 30th in connection with this case? Any meetings, any get-togethers, anything that you can think of?
I went to the O'Keefe's house.
Other than that, anything else?
On the way home, Kerry Roberts' daughter is good friends with Michael Lank, so we dropped her off at Michael Lank's house, and Mike's wife came out of the house. Him and Kerry are friends, and she, jumped in the car and was consoling Kerry and asked how the O'Keefes were doing, and we talked to her.
So you pulled up to Michael Lank's house on the 30th. That's never been reported, has it?
I guess I never thought much of it.
Never thought of reporting the fact that one of the first responding officers on the case, working for Canton PD, which is considered off the case, you had a meeting with, it was unreported the next day?
I didn't meet with Michael Lank.
I see. So you pulled up in the car. Tell me about that again. You pulled up in the car, and what happened?
And Lex, her daughter, went into
You
the
can
house.
see why that's insane, right?
No.
She's going to go
Michael's
inside
wife
and
came out of the house.
report
Okay. And y'all had a conversation about what?
to her husband.
She got in the car, and her and Kerry are friends, and she was checking on Kerry and, just saying, oh my God, this is so crazy, just checking in on the O'Keefes.
How long did that take?
Well, Kerry's
And
a
it's the
talker,
first time she's ever been in
could have
there?
been an hour.
What the?
Could
What
have
is
been hours standing
happening?
outside,
Sitting in the car.
sitting in the car on February 30th. Never came in the house?
Not February 30th.
I said February 30th. January 30th. Never went in the house?
I might have ran in to go to the bathroom.
It's the back end of a blizzard. It's freezing cold outside. Sitting in the car for an hour.
The car was running, Kerry, and they were talking. It's her friend.
Did you have any conversation before your testimony today with anybody about you going to Michael Lank's house on January 30th? Anybody?
Yes.
Tell me about that. Who was it? And when?
It was a couple of weeks ago at the DA's office.
The DA's office had an interview with you, correct?
Not an interview. They just explained this process.
I mean, a conversation? How about that?
Yes.
You met with folks at the DA's office.
Break down the definition of interview to the finest.
Mr. Lally, Ms. McLaughlin,
terms.
Steve Nelson, Trooper Brian Tully, I believe, and another woman, I can't remember her name, unfortunately.
Someone from the DA's office?
Yes.
Beelan?
No.
Lynn Beelan?
No, she's here today. She works with Steve Nelson.
Ah, an employee of the DA's office?
Yes.
That sounds like a pretty big meeting.
I wouldn't call it a big meeting. There was, 5 of them?
How long did you, 5 of them, and then you?
My daughter Allie came with me also.
The meeting's getting bigger.
The meeting's getting bigger.
No, we both went.
Was Allie in the room when you were, I was going to say interviewed, but you take issue with every word I use, when you were talked to by the DA?
Allie and I were both in the room when they went over everything, how this all
Yeah, that
works,
looked
because
great
this is
there,
all brand
too.
new to us. And then they asked me to leave the room.
You were about to say, and I lost the end of that sentence, when they received what?
I didn't mean the word received.
Did you receive anything?
No, I looked at my grand jury notes.
Now, at this meeting, was anybody taking notes?
No.
You have a bunch of lawyers and DAs, and nobody has a notepad in front of them, like notes?
I believe Mr. Lally had a number of folders on the table.
Taking notes? Was
I do not believe anyone was taking notes. It was a casual meeting to explain this process.
that meeting recorded in any way that you're aware of?
No.
How long did the meeting last?
Allie and I were probably in the room, I don't know, approximately 20 minutes. Then I left and they spoke with her. And then I went back in and they spoke with me.
How long did they speak with you?
Honestly, maybe half hour.
And during that half hour to an hour, did they go over with you what they expected your testimony to be?
They never spoke about what they expected my testimony to be. They just showed me some pictures that might be shown. I listened to the 911,
What pictures?
just of the house and how I'd be asked to, show, okay, we're going to put a picture of the house and you'll have a laser.
Okay, when we started this conversation, it was because you said, in answer to my question, was anything ever brought up to you about this meeting at Lank's house?
Mm-hmm.
You said yes.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously they did talk to you about your testimony. It wasn't just about the process, correct?
I asked what discovery had been turned in regard to me.
So you wanted to prepare to make sure that you knew what you might be asked on cross-examination, correct?
I wanted to know what was coming. Yes.
And you knew that one of the things was coming after this meeting. Well, let me ask it a different way. During this meeting, did Mr. Lally tell you one of the things that's going to be coming is you had an off-the-books meeting at Lake's house for 45 minutes? Did he tell you that?
No, that's not how I was told.
Did he tell you that the defense had uncovered a report that established that you were actually at Michael Lake's house for 45 minutes that had never been reported to the defense or the prosecution before the phone extraction had been done? Did he tell you that?
I was asked, oh, were you at Michael Lank's on the 30th?
So you've had a lot of time to come up with a story about why you were at Michael Lank's, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
I didn't need time to make up a story because I have the truth of why we went.
And the truth, according to you, is you pulled up at Michael Lank's house. The first responding officer and friends of the office had a meeting with him the next day that was never reported to anybody for any purpose.
I
Just met with his wife out in the car while the car was running for 45 minutes to an hour. That's your story.
It's not a story, it's the truth. Carrie dropped her daughter off. The wife came out. Carrie is a talker. They started talking. A tragedy had happened the day before.
It is interesting, would you not agree, that the day before you had this off-the-books meeting at Michael Lank's house, Nicole Albert says, we'll get more info tomorrow, meaning the very day you show up at Lank's house.
Again, I never spoke with Mike Lank at his house. It was not an off-the-books meeting. It was Carrie dropping her daughter at one of her good friend's house, whose husband happens to be a Canton cop. That is what it is. That is the truth.
A lot of coincidences. Do you agree?
Objection.
Sustained.
Yes.
Let them fight. Just let them go. Let them go in the streets.
Son of a bitch!
That's, by the way, what did Mr. Lally show you in respect of this issue about this meeting at Michael Lank's house?
He showed me nothing.
He just told you about it.
Brian Tully told me.
Okay, what did Mr. Tully tell you? Trooper Tully. What exactly did he tell you at this meeting about this Michael Lank issue?
He said, did you go to Michael Lank's on January 30th? And at first I said, no, I've never been to his house. And then I thought about it and I said, oh my gosh, yes, I did go there. And that was the extent of the conversation.
You said, yeah, I did go there, and he didn't ask to follow up, like, what the heck were you doing at Michael Lank's house the day after this issue?
Objection.
Visited.
I'll allow it.
He didn't ask to follow up like that?
I do not believe he did.
So Trooper Tully had you come down for an interview. He confronted you with a fact that had never been disclosed before, to wit. You showed up at Michael Lank's house, and when you said, yeah, oh yeah, hang on, I think your words were, oh my gosh, yeah, I think I did go there. And he didn't ask a follow-up question?
He was there. You're spinning all of this.
Ma'am, I do a lot of things.
Yeah.
I will spin. There's a judge here to make sure that I don't spin. I'm asking you a question. It's very direct.
I do not believe he asked me a follow-up question.
So that was the end of that conversation about Michael Lank, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Lally didn't have any follow-up questions?
I don't believe Mr. Lally was in the room.
Who else? I thought you said Mr. Lally and Mr. McLaughlin.
They were. They might not have been in the room at that time.
I see. So Mr. Lally just happened to, just saunter out?
It was a different time.
So Mr. Lally was in and out of the conversation?
Mr. Lally was not there when this conversation happened
Well, why is that?
because I met with Brian Tully and he was not there.
Is Brian Tully taking notes?
No.
He's a state trooper interviewing a witness. And
He was-
Objection.
Sustained.
The same report that has you at Michael Lank's house also has you picking up Nicole Albert going by 34 Fairview just before you went to Michael Lank's house. You aware of that?
We did not pick up Nicole Albert.
So you went by 34 Fairview, then diverted, and right after you went by 34 Fairview, went directly over to Michael Lank's house. What was the reason you stopped by 34 Fairview first?
We didn't stop by. Maybe Carrie slowed down, but we did not stop by 34.
So you did a drive-by 34 Fairview. Giggles? What?
No, that's how we get to Michael Lank's house.
If the report shows that you actually stopped at 34 Fairview and then went to Michael Lank's house, would we have another oh my gosh moment?
Nope, no oh my gosh moment. We did not pick up Nicole Albert.
Did anybody else go with you over to Michael Lank's house?
No, it was Carrie, myself, and her daughter.
Your Honor, maybe briefly.
Okay. Okay.
On the morning of January 29th. Dave, we've talked.
Thanks everybody for hanging
we
out.
talked,
Appreciate it. Hit that
in some
like
detail about
if you
your
haven't
calls with
not.
John O'Keefe on the morning
Appreciate
of
it for
January
hanging
29th.
and banging.
Can you call that?
Yes.
Conversation? I would focus your attention on or at 12:14 a.m., moving up to about 12:50 a.m. You have that time in mind?
Yes,
You've seen the celebrate extraction from John O'Keefe's phone, which Mr. Lally showed you the other day, correct?
correct.
And you went through the series of phone calls that were made and that appear on his extraction report, correct?
Correct.
I just want to run through those time-wise very quickly just to orient you, if I can, and then I'll ask you some specific questions about it. There was a call at 12:14 a.m., correct?
Correct.
That was a call that you indicated was answered. You had a conversation with Mr. O'Keefe.
Correct.
There was a call at 12:18 and 47 seconds. That call also was answered by you. John O'Keefe made that phone call, correct?
Correct.
Then there's the 12:29 and 44-second call that you indicated was not answered,
Correct.
and that was a call to you, from you to him.
Correct.
There was a 12:41 call from you to John O'Keefe, correct? That was.
Correct.
There was a 12:41 and 54-second call from you to him. Is that right?
Correct.
There was a 12:43 and 19-second call from you to him.
Correct.
12:46 a.m. and 16 seconds from you to him.
Correct.
12:47 and 52 seconds from you to him.
Correct.
And 12:50 and 37 seconds from you to him, correct?
Correct.
You saw in his extraction report that all of those calls after 12:18 were missed calls, correct?
In his report that you showed me?
Correct. In other words, the only two calls that were answered were the 12:14 and 12:18. Everything else was a missed call.
I believe so. I would have to refer to it again because I've seen so many reports.
And Ms. McCabe, according to the extraction reports that you've seen this morning, comparing yours to his, every single one of those calls was deleted off your phone, correct? According to the reports.
According to that report, yes.
Let me ask you another question. Have you ever misplaced your phone?
Yes.
In life, everybody does, right?
Yes.
What's one of the first things you do if you're with your daughter or your husband or a friend and you're in your house and you misplace your phone? What do you do?
Oh, I'll ask them to call my phone.
Right. Even over and over and over, right?
Correct.
Could be as many as 5, 6, 7 times.
Usually I hear it the first or second time.
You're looking for a buzz or a ring, isn't that right?
Correct.
And you might do that if you're searching for a missing phone, correct?
Correct.
With regard to the calls that were deleted from your phone, you were asked about this under oath at another proceeding, weren't you?
Correct.
And you claimed at another proceeding that you had an explanation for all these missed calls starting at 12:29, 12:41, 12:41, 12:43, 12:46, 12:47, 12:50. You have an explanation for that, right?
Can I see the report?
I'm asking you about your prior testimony.
And I'm asking,
About these calls,
yes, I'm asking, can I see it, please?
I'm asking you a different question. At this other proceeding, which you were under oath,
Yes.
right? You explained that these calls were what? These missed calls, incessant missed calls. What were they? You used the word. Right? 2 words.
I believe I used the word butt dials.
You claimed that every one of these calls was a butt dial. Is that right?
Yes.
So according to you, you literally butt dialed John O'Keefe's phone 6 times in the span of 19 minutes. Is that right?
I don't remember making any of those calls, so my assumption is I put my phone in my back pocket,
Dude.
and that was it.
When you dial someone by mistake, you hit a button, set your phone down, the phone has to be open. You'll agree with that, right?
Correct.
Can't be locked. It takes several
This
iterations
part
of
makes no
movement to get the
sense
phone
to
open.
me.
Face ID or password, right?
Correct.
So when you hit the button by mistake, walk away. That's a butt dial. You can call butt dials. What happens with the call?
I assume it goes to voicemail?
It's a good assumption, because that's exactly what it does, isn't it? You've had a phone for a lot of years, right?
Yes.
It rings and rings and rings until it goes to voicemail.
Correct.
So in order to hang up that butt dial, you have to interact with that phone yet again, don't you?
Yes.
So if you had 6 butt dials, 7 butt dials, you'd not only have to interact with the phone once to butt dial John, you then have to interact with it every single time to turn off that phone ringer so it doesn't go to voicemail, wouldn't you?
I suppose.
Which makes 14 interfaces with that phone over the course of 19 minutes. Is that right?
I mean, I guess I don't have it all right in front of me, but there were also text messages I was sending, so again, maybe I said, oh shoot, I called them, and then I turned it off.
But your claim is you don't remember those incessant butt dials and those incessant hangups at all, correct?
I honestly don't.
So you would have had to forget that you interacted with, by the way, you'll read the phone extraction show that John O'Keefe got no voices from you, right?
I didn't look, but
So that means you would have had to interact with that phone 14 times over the course of 19 minutes at the exact time frame that the Commonwealth suggests John O'Keefe lost his life.
Objection.
Sustained. You can ask that differently, and this will be your last question for today, please.
Yes, Your Honor.
That's huge.
The period
stuff,
between
man.
1229
Like, that's...
and 1250, which is the exact period that you were, quote, butt dialing John multiple times. That's also the exact period that John O'Keefe was rendered incapacitated. Is that right?
Objection.
That's sustained. We'll start up again tomorrow, okay?
Thank you.
All right, folks, so I'm going to stay there and walk out the door.
Dude, what the
right, so
fuck,
jurors-
dude? Like, yeah, the ending there was absolute madness. Like, you don't remember these these calls. So we're going to call them butt dials. And if they are butt dials, anybody that's ever had a butt dial or received a butt dial from someone, you get the voicemail and then you just hear basically noise and the sounds in the background until it cuts itself off. That's what's crazy. 7 times you make the call with your ass. 7 times you hang up right at the perfect moment before it goes to voicemail. That's crazy. That's absolutely insane. I don't know. Tomorrow's going to be a full day. We're going to be back at it. In the morning, I think we're going to be on Jay's channel in the morning, so make sure you're hanging and banging in the morning. 9 a.m., they usually start pretty sharp. And if they don't, you're going to be hanging out with Jay and Bob Mata. So you're in good hands anyway. Thank you all so much for coming through here tonight. Really appreciate it. Next time you will see me will be Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to be on here live with my brother Dan. And then Friday, we're going to be hanging out. And I know Holly Berry's in the chat here. Last Friday night on Feral Friday, anybody new in the stream here that's unfamiliar, we do a show on Fridays called Feral Friday where we get a little bit wild and we watch movies, we watch TV shows. We do it on a website called Kick. It's a lot of fun, but Holly Berry is going to get to basically create an entire night of Feral Friday once we get to Kick. So I'm excited to see what she curates, to see what she creates, to see what we get from Holly Berry. Let me see, I got a little Holly Berry love here for you right quick. Hold on. And I got a shout out. Holly is ready to rock and roll. It's going to be cool. And also, tonight, we got a new member coming through. Also, well, first of all, we have Shannon showing off being here for 8 months. And I can't pop anything on the screen. For some reason, that's glitched out on me tonight. But still, and she says, I appreciate you, Steve. No, Shannon, I appreciate you for coming through and always being amazing. So let me give you a little...
Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
8 months. Heather Honey then came through and become a Buzzed and Confused level member. Heather Honey, thank you so freaking much. And anybody that wants to go check out Heather Honey, she's been trying to do some stuff on YouTube as well. And I know that she was trying to cover or is covering the Karen Reed trial also. So yeah, give Heather Honey some love, man. I love when people start doing any kind of creating, quite frankly. But everybody hanging out here tonight, thank you all so freaking much. You're absolutely amazing. And oh man, I don't know if Donna White's in the chat. I haven't seen her all night, but she sent me I think it was a PayPal. And thank you so much, Donna. I appreciate the shout out of that. That's absolutely amazing. And I'll give you a little bit of love with one of these right here. But man, I can't wait to see what Holly Berry comes up with. Oh shit, Mountain Mama, whoa, holy shit.
Well, let me tell you something, brother.
Wow, 15 months, still my favorite channel. Thank you so much. Mountain Mama has been here for a minute. That is a long one. That's a long one. Holy
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary, Mountain Mama. And the first person I ever modded on this channel was Mountain Mama. So yeah, that's a long time. 15 months is yeah. Publicly Buzzed has been around for a minute now. We're going to keep on trucking, folks. I think we're covering true crime in a unique style and way that nobody else is really doing. You know, I like to bring the facts through with a little bit of reactions and general knowledge, but also with a side of comedy whenever we can do it. So yeah, you guys are fucking awesome. Thank you all so much. I love you guys. Talk to you in the chats tomorrow, and we'll get right back on here because tomorrow's going to be another banger. I almost absolutely guarantee it. And anybody else new in the chats also, if maybe you've heard through the grapevines of something called Murder Church, folks, come on. Sunday mornings, 9 a.m. Eastern time, we're doing a trial with Alan Jackson. He's a prosecutor in that trial. And yeah, it's a wild one. I'm calling it a Hollywood trial. It is for a man named Phil Spector, who is a music genius, mogul, icon, worked with the Beatles. Crazy trial. Come through on Sunday mornings. But yeah, we're going to get the hell out of here. Thank you all so much for hanging out tonight. See you Thursday. Talk to you tomorrow. Later.
Nothing to see here, please.